What's up, beautiful people? Welcome to another episode of the Gold Mind Podcast. I first just want to say thank you guys so much for your support, for your kind words, for sharing the podcast, just for listening in. I really do appreciate you guys so much. It's been a joy to just hear a lot of the feedback that you have been giving me on the podcast and how it's been helping you. That's a really just sobering for me and inspirational for me. And I just want to say thank you. So that's the first thing. And also just want to announce also that ad spots are available on the podcast. We are well over 10,000 listens. It airs on Apple Podcasts. It airs on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, it airs everywhere podcasts are heard. It's a great opportunity to advertise your business. So if you are interested in that, definitely send me a DM or email. I will leave that in the show notes. But yes, we do have ad spots available. We're trying to get fancy, okay? So if you are interested, definitely email me and I will send you the information for that. Now that we have all of that out of the way, I'm super excited for this episode. And basically, as you've seen, the title for this episode is managing emotions. And this really came, the inspiration for this episode came from a sermon that one of our, we had a guest speaker at church, and he talked about emotional health. And it was just really good information. And I felt like this would be something that we all could benefit from as entrepreneurs because you guys have heard me talk about it a little bit on a previous episode where I talked about just being in a season right now that is kind of hard. And I'll kind of just expand on that for a moment. Life has just been happening. And so we know as entrepreneurs, especially solopreneurs, or even if you have a team, which I do have people that are helping me, our business is affected by us and what we have going on when we are running the business. And so a lot of life has been happening, nothing too crazy, but just a lot has been happening. And when life happens, I've taken this season as a lesson of learning how to push through and how to continue on with the responsibilities that I have, even when life has been happening. And when I say life has been happening, a lot of times when things aren't going the way we want to, or we're distracted by a lot of things going on in our personal lives, as creatives and people who create content and create different things for our clients or whatever the case may be, it affects us. It affects the way our energy levels and how we're able to create and do business and run our businesses. And so I'm really learning in this season how to continue to push and walk through even when things aren't perfect on the outside or things aren't going the way that we want. And a lot of it is knowing how to manage our emotions. And so I thought this would be a great episode for us because I know I'm not the only one. And no matter what season you're in, whether you're at the tip top of your game, you're at the peak of your game, business wise, and money is flowing, or whatever the case may be, you're always going to have issues with family or your relationships or navigating things financially or whatever the case may be. There will always be something, and we cannot wait for things to be perfect for us to be able to really manage and run our businesses effectively. So managing your emotions is a huge skill that you need to have. And it's something I feel like we talk about or we see people talk about more and more on social media. But I really wanted to use what I learned from that sermon and apply it to us specifically. So I hope you guys really enjoy this episode. And I would really love to know what hit home for you. So definitely let's continue the conversation after this in the comments below. So the speaker, his name was Paul. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but I will definitely put his information in the show notes because I don't want nobody to think I'm trying to take credit for what this man has said. But he gave 6 different points about emotions or things that we need to know in auditing our emotional health. So the first thing that I think is important when we are managing our emotions is to know that emotions are just information. It's just data. And I'm pretty sure you've heard this before, but the thing that stood out for me when he was explaining this, he said, just because we feel an emotion, it does not mean that we need to do anything about it. And I was just like, "Ooh, that's so good." Because a lot of times when emotions come up for us, we feel like in order to process them, we have to do something with them. We have to, you know, take action on them or try to dismiss them or get rid of them or, let somebody know how we're feeling. And when he said that, it was so true, which is why a lot of us don't process our emotions. We normally get rid of them. And that can look like a lot of different things. But I think that was just really good to know that just because we feel an emotion, it does not mean that we have to do anything about them. It is just information and data. And when we know that, that in turn kind of tells me, or when I was thinking about what he said, it tells me that I need to go inward to look at that emotion to figure out where is it coming from. Um, and that is the beginning of processing an emotion or managing that emotion. Not that we have to do something about it or take action on it, but to look at it, to examine it, and to see where is it coming from. Take the time to sit with that emotion and figure that out, not necessarily that we have to do something about it. The second thing that he said that was like mind blowing to me was that emotions are not feelings. He said a lot of times we think that emotions and feelings are the same thing. We use them interchangeably. We hear it used interchangeably. But he said emotions become a feeling when you give it a meaning. And I was like, whoa, that is so true. A lot of us end up feeling bad when we have a certain emotion because of the meaning that we give it. And I've taught about this. If you guys have been listening to the podcast for a while, you guys know I talked about the CTFAR model that I learned from a mentor in my head, Brooke Castillo. She has a podcast called the Life Coach School Podcast, and she's the CEO of all of that. But anyway, basically it says that there are circumstances in the world. There are thoughts about those circumstances. Our thoughts drive our feelings, and our feelings drive actions. And the actions that we take over a period of time repeatedly create the results that we experience in our life. So if there are results that we don't like, we have to look at our actions. And if we're taking actions that we don't like or we want to change, we have to look at our feelings, which everything basically goes back to the thoughts that we have about circumstances. So I felt like that was in alignment with what this says. Like we have emotions, there are emotions that come up. That's just human nature. But based on the meaning that we give the emotion, it creates the feeling. So it's kind of like the in between the thoughts and the feeling part of the CTFAR model. They come from the meaning that we give the emotion that we feel in the moment. And when I kind of started to think about things like, especially like in business, right? So if we have a launch and it doesn't go the way we want, we start to feel like we're not enough, right? And if you think about that feeling, what meaning did you give what happened? That is what created the feeling of not feeling like you're enough or you're not doing the right thing. And a lot of times when I looked at it in the past, I thought about, well, I felt like I didn't do it right because nobody bought the course, or whatever it is, bought into the program, it meant that they didn't believe in me, or they thought that the stuff wasn't valuable, or they thought it was too expensive, or they thought that I wasn't capable of teaching it. I just applied certain meanings to it, which created that feeling of not feeling enough, or not feeling like what I have was valuable. And so it's important that we check the meanings that we give certain things. All of our feelings of imposter syndrome or not feeling like we're enough is attached to some type of meaning that we give it. And it's not always the truth. And so I think that a very important part of managing our emotions is questioning what meaning we have given our emotions. What meaning have we given certain situations or things that happen to us? And once we're able to sit down and look at the meaning that we've given it, we can challenge that to see, is that really true? And so, as we're navigating the different areas of entrepreneurship, whether you're navigating, if you're in the right space, if you're doing the right things, we have to look at the meanings that we're giving certain situations, and it will really show us why we're feeling the way that we feel. The guest speaker gave the example of when you're in a conversation with somebody, or you may be having a debate with somebody or argument with somebody about something. And he said there's always two voices: the voice of what the person is saying to you, and then it is what you say about what they said. And what you say about what they said is the most powerful voice in your life. And he was saying, to make sure that we don't assign the wrong meaning to something, make sure that we get a full understanding, because what we make something mean can either push us towards our destiny or away from our destiny. And so I thought that was very powerful, and we can definitely take that into account within our managing our emotions and the day-to-day stuff that happens in our life and in entrepreneurship. Because listen, entrepreneurship can definitely be an emotional roller coaster ride. So that was the second thing. The third thing he talked about that's important for managing emotions is that emotions need border control. And he talked about how he was actually from, where was he from? I think he was from like Australia or somewhere. But anyway, oh no, New Zealand. And he was talking about when he came into the country, he was like, there are people that are there who interrogate you. Basically, they want to know, where did you come from? Who are you staying with? Do you have family here? What's your purpose for being here? Like, who sent you? Like, all of these things, because they want to make sure that there is nobody here in the states that don't belong here, or they're up to, some ulterior motive. And he was like, the same thing applies to our emotions. I mean, the thoughts that we have, which create emotions and feelings, right? So he was like, whenever a thought comes in, we definitely need to have border control there so that we protect our inner world. He was like, ask the same questions. Okay, here's a thought. When emotion comes, when we start to feel an emotion, where did it come from? Who sent you? Do you have any other family here? He was like, because a lot of times, the way our brain is made, and I talked about this too, right? We process things that come in based on old things that have happened. This looks familiar, we automatically categorize it. We may say, oh, this is danger because we've been here before, we felt this before, and so this means you're in danger, and so you need to take flight or fight position, So he was like asking, like, do you have family here? Do you have something that's kind of familiar that is making you believe something or create a meaning to something that may not be true, or based on, all things that have happened to you? He was like, you need to interrogate the emotions that come up, interrogate the thoughts, so that you make sure that there are no emotions or thoughts that are in your inner world that don't need to be here. So I thought that was a really good point when it comes to managing our emotions and processing emotions. Number one, know that It is data. It is just information. We do not have to do anything with it. That emotions and feelings are not the same thing. So make sure we do not assign the wrong meaning to the feeling, but actually question the meaning, if anything. And then also interrogate the thoughts around those emotions. Who sent you? Why are you here? Where did you come from? Who else do you know here? What's your purpose? How are you serving my inner world? Those are important things when it comes to managing our emotions. The fourth thing that he said was emotions need boundaries. And this one was a huge one for me. He was like, boundaries are a place where I can love you and me simultaneously. Boundaries are here to protect me, not to control you. And he said, boundaries is about self respect, not their respect for you. So he was just telling us, make sure that you never put your emotional home in another human, because when you do, you give them the power to make you homeless. And we have to realize that we are the CEOs of our life, and that means our emotional life as well. So our emotions need boundaries, meaning that we have to have boundaries set up that protect us. And we have to make sure that we're in a place, no matter what the situation is, when it comes to our emotions and choosing the right thing that works for us, we have to make sure that we're in a space where we can love ourselves and love them too, right? That I'm happy with myself and that I can serve you. So if it's not a space where it works for me and you, it can't just only work for you, it has to work for me and you, then our emotional life is going to be all over the place. It won't work. And so we have to make sure that we have enough self love and self respect, that we give ourselves boundaries so that we can be in the best emotional state possible. And one thing that I'm pretty sure you guys have heard, but he was saying that in order for us to serve and be our best, our greatest gift to anybody, whether it's our kids, our clients, our customers, is a healthy us. And the only way that we can be healthy is with healthy boundaries. So I just love the fact that when it comes to managing our emotions, boundaries have to be non-negotiable. We have to have them in place. So if you do find yourself struggling in this area, one of the books that I highly suggest is a book called Find Boundaries, Find Peace. It's by Nedra Tawwab. I don't know how to pronounce her last name. Let me see, can I find it? It's called Set Boundaries, Find Peace, A Guide to Reclaiming Yourself. Nedra Glover Tawwab. I don't know how you pronounce it. But anyway, it's a very good book and a very great starting point for boundaries. I often say too, like a lot of times when we feel overwhelmed and burned out in our businesses, and we're trying to balance everything from, being a solopreneur to managing our homes and our families and all our responsibilities. A lot of times, if you feel overwhelmed and burned out, it's because of the boundaries that you have in place. And you probably should have stronger boundaries around your business and around your family life. And it always, I just find it always comes back to boundaries. So this will be a great book if you find yourself struggling with that. A lot of times we think it's a time management thing, but if you don't have strong boundaries, you're not gonna be good at managing your time well either. So definitely, if you find yourself struggling with boundaries, definitely get that book, because it is a great place to start. The fifth thing that he talks about when it comes to managing emotions is emotions need literacy. And he talks about there are a lot of emotions that appear the same but are not the same. And if you give an emotion the wrong name, you're gonna suffer because you're thinking it's anger when it's really you just being very passionate about something. Most of the time I feel like we don't give ourselves grace, or we're hard on ourselves because the thing that we're feeling, we're not accurately identifying it. And so if you don't really accurately identify it, how will you know how to manage it? right? So if I feel like he was giving an example of guilt and shame. If we're trying to figure out how to handle guilt, but it's really shame, those are two different things. They may feel kind of like the same, but if we identify them incorrectly, we won't really be able to manage those emotions effectively because we've misidentified them. And I remember reading something, I can't remember where it came from, but it was talking about looking at a list, getting a list of emotions. And when you feel something, going down that list to make sure that you correctly identify what you feel so that you can manage it the best way possible. One of the suggestions that I have is Googling the emotional wheel, and I'll put it in the show notes because it has a lot of different descriptions for emotions. And I've just learned that over time that we are pretty bad at identifying emotions. One of the reasons why is because we feel a lot of things at one time. And so as you're on this journey to managing your emotions better, I highly suggest that you just maybe take a snapshot of that wheel that I'm talking about so that you can in the moment go over it and just say, let me try to identify what I'm feeling right now. And it's a large big wheel that has a whole bunch of different emotions on there. And once you're able to identify better what you're feeling, you can communicate that better. And you can just make better decisions overall when it comes to how you're going to process and manage them. So if you find that in a lot of situations you're feeling a lot of shame or guilt or whatever frustration, you can look up ways to process that and just ways to communicate how you're feeling. Even when it comes to if you're feeling a certain way with your spouse or a friend or whatever the case may be, you can communicate like, hey, I'm feeling a lot of disrespect. And disrespect and being not feeling heard is two totally different things. And so it starts with you being able to identify it. That's the main point here. And so I highly suggest that you take a picture of that wheel and just kind of use that to help you better identify the way you're feeling. And then the last thing he talks about is emotional hygiene and making sure that we don't harbor bad emotions. We have to be very intentional about our emotional health and our inner world. Just because, like I said, as entrepreneurs, our business is an extension of who we are. And if we have just a really bad emotional inner world, is going to spill over into our businesses. It's going to spill over into how we talk to people, how we talk to our team, how we move, how we run our businesses. All of that it is affected about by our emotional world and our emotional state. So we have to be very intentional about our emotional hygiene. And one of the things that I've been doing is making sure that I have a routine in place for my emotional world or me managing my emotions. If bad emotions come up, how do I process those emotions so that they don't just linger and they don't affect the rest of my day or my work day? Even if that's, hey, I have a lot to do today and I feel certain emotions, I don't want to just dismiss them, but I am going to put them on hold for another time so that I can just keep my mind clear and I can finish up my responsibilities. I'm not dismissing it. I'm not saying that I'm not going to deal with it ever, but I have learned how to say, hey, I'm going to put this on pause for a moment so that I can really give it the attention that I need. One of the other things that I do for emotional hygiene is making sure that I'm processing and I'm feeling all the feels. I'm identifying how I feel. I have a plan in place if I need to communicate how I feel, and just doing whatever I need to do so that those emotions, especially bad emotions, don't just linger and start to affect my whole everything. So definitely create a plan for processing emotions. This is something that I had to learn to do through therapy. And if that's something that you need, definitely do it. If it's something that you need to look up, there are probably a bunch of videos on YouTube that talks about processing emotions. Either way, make sure that you have a plan in place, because we don't just want to have a stinky emotional world where people don't like to work with us, people don't like to be around us, people don't like to deal with you because you have not processed emotions and your hygiene is just bad. They never know, what they're going to get when they're working with you, because you fly off the handle very quickly, or whatever the case may be. All of that is affected by our emotional hygiene. So do whatever you need to do in order to make sure you're at your best. Our emotions become our mood becomes our temperament, right? And our temperament turns into who we are as a person, or our personality. And it affects all of our relationships. And we want to make sure that we are on top of that. And it starts with emotions. So I hope that you guys enjoy, and that you will be more intentional with your emotional health. Take an audit, do an audit, and make sure you see, like, how is my emotional life right now? How has it been affecting my business? How has it been affecting the way that I'm able to balance everything and manage everything? And then do the work that you need to do in order to get it under control and in a good, healthy state. I would love to know which one of these areas around managing emotions you feel like you need a little work on, and what's your plan for kind of bettering that area. Let's continue the conversation in the comments, and definitely share this to, as many people as you can that need help with managing emotions, or may have questions about how to manage emotions effectively. Thank you guys so much for rocking with me on this episode. And I'm excited about next week, because we're going to be talking about dating as an entrepreneur or successful entrepreneur. Y'all know us women, we have the dating world is pee in the pool, and there are a lot of people with a lot of opinions around it. But we're going to actually have a relationship expert on the podcast, and we're going there, y'all. Okay, so it's going to be exciting. Definitely look forward to that. And she not only talks about dating, but also just being able to manage healthy relationships with your spouse, even if you are married, how to do that. Because sometimes, y'all, when we're in a grind mode and we're trying to get to our goals, we can get a little negligent with our spouses. So we don't want that, right? We don't want to be successful but alone. So the episode is all for that. I'm really looking forward to it. And so just thank you guys. I look forward to it, and I will talk to you guys next week.